Everyone, welcome to another episode of Safe Haven Sanctuary. And today's guest, I'm so excited to have her on. She has been honestly such a life-changing person for me in my own spiritual journey, in my business. So I want to welcome Christina Rice, aka Christina the Channel. How are you? Thank you so much for being on here.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm super excited. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, of course. So, can you tell everybody a little bit about what you do and like not just what you do, but who you are, Christina? Because I think like a lot of the times like we can identify ourselves with our work and it's an extension of us, but like who's Christina? Christina Rice.
Yeah, well, I think that to be honest, unlike most people, my work is connected to who I am,
Yeah.
So a lot of what I do for work is just I do feel like I get paid to be myself, because everything
Yeah.
I do, I would be doing whether or not I was getting paid for it. And that's really how I fell into it. But like professionally and as a person, because it is core to who I am, like
Yeah.
I'm an intuitive, I'm a psychic, I'm an energy healer. So I'm primarily a clairvoyant. I utilize all my psychic senses, but my whole life I've been able to see energy fields and read energy bodies naturally. So uh it's kind of like my art, it's my
Yeah.
art to work with the energy body, to work with energy. I have a different perspective on how the world works because I can just see different things. Um, and that has just lent itself to kind of all of the artistry I feel like moves through me, whether it's doing energy work, helping people with inner healing, with physical healing, with emotional healing, energy work, whatever it is, manifestation. I'm also a writer. I've written a few books, but I just love to write. It's been one of my favorite creative outlets since I was a kid. And yeah, I think that like who I am is at my core is just like a deeply curious person who wants to understand. And I feel like that drive within me has always led me to really interesting insights and people and experiences because the universe is responding to that desire in my heart. And
Yeah.
it's allowed me to collect a lot of really unique life experiences and attract people into my reality who I've learned so much from. Um, and so I feel like I'm just kind of a collector of interesting information, and I like to help put all of that together for people and help them see things in a different way. So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. And honestly, like especially just being like I've dove into your work, your psychic development course, your I think it was like the 5D accelerator. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, like and I'm in your membership too, and you can just see that you are truly yourself and in not just like in your authenticity, but you're really carrying out your purpose, you know?
Thank
And
you.
yeah, no, of course. Thank you. Thank you so much for like how much you've helped me. So this is an honor to have you. But one of the things that I was like actually drawn to your work. So how I actually found you was through you did a podcast with Nora Virginia, and I follow
Yeah.
her on Instagram. I love her podcast, and
Mm.
since that day, I went and I like looked you up on Instagram, and I was like, holy shit, like, you're just like the real deal, and I love that. No, I love that because like I think in the coaching industry, like there's lots of masking that happens, you know.
hmm
And what I find that like you're so good at is not just like, well, one of the things that really drew me to you was how direct you are, but like you're also like respectful and compassionate. And like you said, like you have like this curiosity for understanding, and that really shines through your work. So,
mm
yeah, so that's how I found you. That I just like went like down like a rabbit hole. I still go down rabbit holes in your work because it's just so beautiful. But a question I had for you. So the directness, like I know a lot of people tell you this is like okay, like you're direct, like you're like no BS approach, and I know that you know that about yourself too. Were you always like that, or was this something that was like it was like you had to build on it? You know, yeah, I want to hear your story.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I It's funny because yeah, people tell me that, but I think if people didn't tell me that, I wouldn't think of myself that way.
yeah,
I only know that I'm that way because I know that's how people perceive me, but I don't perceive myself like that.
yeah,
Um, but I've been like that since I was a kid, and there was definitely a period of my life where I was not like that, where I really suppressed my voice and my truth and tried to adjust how I communicated so everybody would feel more comfortable. And that was honestly the darkest part of my life. I mean, there's so many other things that went along with that at the same time. It was just a full suppression of self.
Yeah.
But I really shut down my voice. And a lot of that was because when I was younger and I was so direct, it really triggered people. And I also didn't have the discernment. There were lots of things I was saying that I think as an adult I would stand by. And there were also things I was saying that I was a kid and I'm like, okay, probably could have had some more tact with that one, right? Like not
Can you
everything
give
that
an
comes to your,
example?
I mean, it's funny, I was talking about this weekend. As a kid, you're a child and I was intuitive and I just knew when people were lying. I knew when they weren't. And I would say things like, well, you're lying. That's not true. Or I would call out like, oh, that's not who you're with though. You're with that person and like accidentally reveal someone was cheating. Like I would
Oh
say things like
shit.
that because I was a kid, and
Yeah.
I did, to me, it's like saying the sky is blue. I
Yeah.
didn't register. So as an adult now I have a bit more discernment, obviously. And I have a lot more kind of control over what I'm tapping into. But as a kid, I just didn't really have that kind of tact. But there were a lot of things I said that as an adult, I mean, I don't think that was out of line, but it would trigger mostly adults around me.
Yeah.
And it made me feel rejected and misunderstood. And so then that led to me when I was a teenager, just really shutting everything down because I felt like people just didn't like me when I was just being myself and because I was triggering people. And so I had to do a lot of my own kind of inner work to feel confident again in my truth and understanding that the people who are for me are going to appreciate that directness and the people who aren't, that's okay. Not everyone's style is for everyone. On the other side of the spectrum, there are lots of people where the way they communicate is like very soft and maybe a little more subtle, and that's a beautiful way to communicate. When I think about myself, that's not the type of person I like to work with. Like if I'm looking for a mentor or a coach, and
Yeah.
that's not because it's better than or worse, it's just a personality type, and what kind of really gets through to you. I'm the kind of person where I like really direct, I like really blunt, I like a kick in the ass, I like a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
And that works for me. And there's lots of other people where that doesn't, and that's totally fine,
Yeah.
but I think, with my style, I'm very direct, but I think anybody who knows me knows like everything I'm saying is coming from a place of love,
Definitely. Yeah.
and the thing, it's funny because I was thinking about this earlier today. I was meditating, and when I meditate, I just kind of get all these content, the content will flow through me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one of the things that I had written down was talking about that directness. And when you've been talking to ascended masters your whole life, like psychically, I
Mhm.
don't know a single person that has gifts similar to mine who is not extremely direct and blunt. We all have the same personality type because I don't know how much of this is my personality just because that's how I am versus how much of this is my personality because from a young age, all the spirits I was talking to, that's how they communicate.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
spirits are not worried about adjusting themselves, for a comfort level. Everything they're saying is super direct and it's really loving, but it's very direct. There's no sugarcoating. There's no beating around the bush to get to a
Mhm.
certain place. It's just, this is the truth. You need to leave the situation. You're not acting from your highest self. You need
Yeah.
to step up here and lead with love. Like it's very direct, it's very loving, but it's super blunt. And I think because, for me, being psychic from a young age, that was a type of parent to me. All of those spirit guides were a type of parent, and so I just very much learned like that's kind of how I was talked to. I would say both my parents are also pretty direct as well as people. So I think all of my input was like, this is just how you communicate with
Yeah.
love. And I think I've just never really understood this whole like beating around the bush thing. I don't really know that it serves anybody at
Yeah.
all. And I think a lot of that is people just being afraid to be seen. I find
Mhm.
typically when people are afraid to be seen, the way they will communicate is very beating around the bush, trying to butter everybody
Yeah.
up before they make a delivery. And I think a lot of that communication style can come from some of these deeper wounds around not wanting to be seen, being afraid of rejection, being not confident in our truth, things like that. Because when you are confident in yourself, you do communicate a lot more directly because you don't need to hide. And
Yeah,
just because you're direct doesn't mean you have to be harsh or mean. They're not the same thing, right? You can be
exactly.
direct and very loving.
Yeah.
And I think that that nuance is really important.
Yeah, and I love the part of what you said is like being direct is so it's like a completely different thing than being like mean and like
Hmm.
diminishing to people, right? And that's why I feel like you deliver things so well because you do it from such a place of like really deep love, right?
Mm.
And like I'm the type of person, like I'll be honest, like growing up, like I definitely was like more so like in like appeasing mode, and it's something that I'm
Hmm.
like now coming out of. And you've been such a help with that, with your courses and everything, really. Like, I'm not, I know I keep saying that, but like, I'm really not exaggerating. Like, you're
Mm.
one of like the number one people that's like helped me, and I haven't even worked like one on one with you yet.
Mm.
And, I really want to talk about too, like, how that's like tied into like your success, like, not just in business, but in love. So, a lot of my audience, like they come to me for like relationship stuff, and even for myself too, like I noticed that like I'm more of like a softer communicator, but over the last year I've been like really stepping into that identity of like being direct and being honest, but from a place of love. And I have seen a lot of shifts like in my love life. I've seen a lot of shifts in my business as well too, because one of my business mentors, she said something to me the other day too, because this came up again for me, and I was like, I don't want to hurt people's feelings, and she's just like, is it that, or like is it that? Are you worried about like being like mean, or like do you even actually care about like hurting people's feelings? You're just worried about how you're being perceived. And I was like, oh fuck, like yeah, like obviously I don't want to hurt people's feelings. That's never an intention. But yeah, it really does come down to like speaking your truth. So if you can share about how that's like impacted your love life and your business and your success around that too. I'd love to hear about that.
Yeah, I think to start with business, and for me, that's mission. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Like staying on mission is about directness and precision. And for me to have a successful business, that's been about alignment with my truth and my mission. And I need to be precise to move the energy forward. And so I think it's about cutting out the noise. And I don't know if you had seen this, I had reposted, a friend had posted this whole quote from Steve Jobs about the same topic, saying pretty much the same thing. It was an interaction between him and someone high up in his company, and she was saying, "Hey, I think we could have communicated that in a little bit of a better way." And he replied and he said something to the effect of, "Wow, you know, I didn't realize that you put vanity above the business." And she said, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "Well, you're much more concerned about how you're perceived than you are us actually doing our best work."
Yeah,
And I
I did
loved
see
that whole
that. Yeah.
interaction. Yeah. And it put great words to kind of how I feel about things. I think early on when I got really clear on my mission and what I wanted to create in this world, like that is my motivation every day. Like I'm not just doing things to do things. I dealt with an existential crisis really early on in my life where I felt like if I'm not living something that's making me feel purpose in my life, I don't want to be doing it. And so really early on, everything I do is because this is my purpose and I feel purpose from this work and I want to help people and have that like allow the divine to move through me in that way. And in order to do that, I don't have time to like beat around the bush or hide or whatever. It's precision and directness comes with that, And when it comes to if I'm here to help people and reflect something back to them, the faster we get to it, the better. And
Yeah.
so I think, I mean, one of my skills is a lot of people will kind of talk their way around the issue, right? They'll ask a question and I'll be like, "What's your real question though?" They don't ever ask their real question.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of this cute little way of dancing around what the real issue is. And
Yeah.
people will give a whole spiel, they'll give me a whole paragraph. And there's only one phrase that mattered to me. And so I'll zero in on that phrase because I'm very much about efficiency in everything
Yeah.
with my career, with my communication. And that's how we actually get results is we're efficient and we're precise. It's not about how long something takes. It's about how quickly we can be precise to get right to the root of it or what we need to do. And that's where you move the energy forward. And so I think that directness and communication translates to success in business for me in a number of ways. First of all, just because as a communicator, I'm effective. So I'm effective in what I'm actually doing in
Mhm.
mentorship, in readings, but also on things like podcasts or when I'm creating content. When you're direct, people can hear you because you're making yourself visible. So I think at a very practical level, direct communication is always going to do best just in a very 3D way in terms of content or what you're putting out there. But also if you're
Mhm.
any type of coach or facilitator, directness is gonna allow you to do your best job and be precise. But on an energetic level, that energy of being very direct with communication is the same thing as I like it shows up everywhere. Like everything I do, I'm cutting out the extras and I'm just
Yeah.
being precise with it needs to get done. So I'm not wasting my time. It's the same thing with the way I manage my time, the way I manage my schedule, the way I manage my personal life. It's all just very precise. And it also is the same thing energetically as I'm ready to be visible. I'm ready to
Yeah.
put myself out there. And so early on, I wasn't caught up in what people were going to think about me. I just went for it.
Mhm.
I took opportunities. I asked for opportunities. I got myself in certain doors and I didn't pause to think about, are people going to like me? Are they not going to like me? Am I going to
Mhm.
hurt people's feelings? Like, I'm never going to pause to think about that because I know at my core, I'm not someone running around trying to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't really need to second guess that. Like, I know my
Yeah.
intentions, then I just move forward. And so I think that forward motion and that kind of just head down, zeroed in, this is the mission, this is my purpose, don't worry about anything else, is what has allowed me to create a lot of business success. Because I think I know that people really hold themselves back for very silly reasons. They're blocking themselves from helping hundreds, thousands, millions of people because they're worried what, Bob over there thinks.
Yeah.
Like, who cares what Bob thinks, And so
Yeah.
I think that's the prioritization. Like, I'm not afraid to say what I think and to say my opinion. So I think that's one with business. And then with love, I mean, man, so many ways. When you're direct with communication, you are being really clear about who you are. And
Mhm.
dating is about just showing who you are and being very authentic with who you are.
Yeah.
One of the reasons why most people struggle in love is because they do all these things to adjust themselves in ways where they think they'll be more likable. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want to be too much, or I don't want to be controversial. And what they'll do is they'll hold back at the beginning until they feel like somebody's in. And then I'm like, well, now I'm safe to open up. That's not how
Yeah.
it works because then that person has just gotten interested in a different version of you.
Yeah.
And when people are confident and authentic, it's very attractive. Like even even if someone has an idea in their mind about their type or what they're attracted to, somebody who's very much not their type or not what they're traditionally attracted to, if they come in the door and they're just super confident and authentic and like quirky in their way, people are attracted to that. Like this is really
Yeah.
interesting. It's a very magnetic thing. And so I just find like with dating, it's all about being your full authentic self from the very beginning, and directness allows you to do that, so
Yeah.
for me, I'm not really interested in wasting time, and so from the beginning I'm not going to like hedge what I say. I'm not going to hold back on my spiritual beliefs or my political beliefs or
Yeah.
my health and wellness beliefs or routines. I'm going to go in strong with my real personality. They're going to find out either way, but I'm looking for someone who's going to be attracted to who I really am, so I think it's the main thing is that subtleness in how people will adjust themselves at the beginning is a problem. But then also, as you get deeper into relationships, relationships are our most intense mirrors. And I'm the kind of person where if something's coming up in my relationship, I'm going to communicate about it right then and there very directly
Mhm.
about how I'm feeling, why it's making me feel that way, what I need. And
Yeah.
clear communication is the most important foundation for any healthy relationship. And a lot of people will be like, I don't want to get into it right now, or they don't know how to articulate how they're feeling. And so they don't ever express it, or they don't want to cause drama, or they gaslight themselves. They don't want to be too
Mm.
much. And it's a lot of suppression of what they really want to say. And it leads to a lot of resentment. Um,
Yes.
and it leads to a lot of just like weird underlying energy between you and your partner. And like that's the one person you should have zero weird underlying energy with,
Yeah,
right? Like
exactly.
everything should be out there, like best friends, lovers, like it should be open, honest, clear communication and just expressing it in the moment. But most people move through their long-term relationships suppressing a lot of feelings, and that builds up over time and it causes you to grow apart, you
Yeah.
know? So I think that's the other thing. And I'll say that's something that with all of my long-term relationships has been reflected to me. Like like the people I've been with have said to me that they're so grateful that I'm so direct with my feelings and how it's making me feel because it
Hmm.
allows us to get clear on it and heal it and make adjustments if we need to really, really fast. And it also allows that person to feel safe and comfortable doing the same with me,
Yeah.
which is what I want. So I think, we got to show up in the way that we want other people
Yeah.
to show up. And it's all about how we're creating that container. And with relationships, it really is a co-creation. And if you don't set the rules, if you don't set the container, someone else is going to set it and it's not going to be something you like. And so when I go into a relationship, I'm really clear and precise about what I want, how I want it to flow, what I need, and then I want to ask that person what they need and what feels good for them. And let's
Hmm.
get really clear from the beginning about what that looks like for us, how we deal with, disagreements, how we deal with intense emotions,
Yeah.
how often we're spending quality time together, like what our social life is like. Like I'm very conscious in how I'm creating all of that because I just think you can't over communicate is how I feel about it.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And like I'm the same way. I recently was like not dating, but I was like getting to know someone, and like I was like from day one, like just really open about like how I felt when things bothered me, and he really appreciated that. But unfortunately,
Hmm.
like, he wasn't in the place to like step up and like meet me there, which is fine. But I felt so anchored in like who I was, like after like a really long time of like being single. And I was like, wow, like for the first time, like I feel like really anchored and like my worth, and like how I'm showing up and that's important to me because like I teach about this, and it's like so
Hmm.
important to me to be an embodiment of our work. I mean, can't be like perfect 100% of the time, but like we have to like really do our best to be in alignment with what we're teaching. And so, yeah, I think like there's some people who can like hold that, and then there's some people who are not, and I think like I know, I mean, as me as like a feminine leader, that it's like important for me to invite people into that too, because sometimes people just don't know how to do it. And like you said, we get to be like these reflective mirrors, right? So yeah, I love everything that you said. And are we allowed to ask about your relationship that you're in?
Sure. What do you want to know?
How'd you guys meet?
Um, well, I manifested him. We,
Obviously.
yeah, we were both definitely, we were manifesting each other. So there was so
Oh,
much like divine energy around it. It's like we have a whole list of all of the synchronicities and everything.
yeah.
But the way we like practically met was I, his sister is one of my clients, and she sent him in for a session. So he came in for a session.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
and that's how I met him. And then after that, like we hung out in like more of a friend setting,
Yeah.
and then he asked me on a date, and then the rest is history.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's a beautiful story. I love how like other people can like kind of play like the bridging for us when it like
Hmm.
comes to whether it's like business opportunities or like love opportunities. So that's
Yeah. You
awesome.
never know. You never know who's gonna connect you
Yeah,
with someone.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah.
And okay, this is another one about relationships, but like I think I've heard in some of your episodes, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but around like our partners like not being our therapist. So I would like love to hear you kind of expand on that because I was actually having a conversation with my friend yesterday about this. And we were kind of talking about like what are actually those boundaries because like for me like with when I have a partner like I want to be able to like they're like my best friend and like I want to be able to like tell them things, right? But also too like I think that we also have to be able to hold ourselves too and be able to
Hmm.
take ourselves through our own shit as well too. But like what do you think would be like those distinct lines? Or like are there even distinct lines, or does it depend on like the situation? Yeah. What's your perspective on that?
I don't know that there's a straight line in the sand. Everybody
Yeah.
wants me to give almost an instruction manual, and a lot of this
Yeah.
is super nuanced and situational,
Yeah.
and a lot of this has to do with just your own personal boundaries. But the way that I think
Yeah.
about it is, and it starts with, I think friendship is a great example. A lot of people use their friends as their therapist, and your friends shouldn't be your therapist. And so
Yeah.
I think that if you don't know the line between your friend and your therapist, then I would start with that, because then that's going to translate into your partner. But I think that the problem is nowadays, I feel like a lot of people are asking way too much of the people in their lives. And on the other side of the spectrum, there's opposite people. There's other people who are asking way too little, right? Like
Yeah.
they're in a relationship where that person is giving nothing. And so there's a difference between supporting someone and being a safe space to share and vent, and offering advice, sure. But like there's a line where that's like, you should talk to a coach or a therapist. And
Hmm.
so I'll say for myself, this gets really tricky because I am a coach and an intuitive, and
Yeah.
I've had to learn this line for myself. And with my partners, for example, there are times where I just feel like you're asking too much of me to like figure this out for you. It's one thing if you're asking me
Yeah.
to just be there with you in it and support you, but it's another one I'm feeling the pressure to like figure this out for you or like heal this for you when I can't do that. That's not my job. And so, I'll say I really think you should work with a coach on this. Like I think that you should talk to a therapist about this. Why don't you go see a nutritionist about this? And so I
Hmm.
think it's where like it feels like people are trying to pull things from us that we just don't even have the capacity to handle, right? And it's one thing if we're asking someone to support us or offer some perspective. It's another when the energy around it is like, I don't know what to do. I need you to fix this for me. Right.
Yeah.
And especially with your partner, people now want they want their partners to be their coach, their therapist, their best friend, their lover. People want their partners to be their parents. They want them to be their children. Like there's so much going on. And I think
Yeah.
the parent-child relationship is another version of this. Like we all know about parentification. There,
Hmm.
there's there's an energetic difference. Like as a parent, you should be parenting your child, and there's a problem when you're asking your child to parent you,
Yeah.
right? But then there's also, as you get older, it's like, but we can also have a friendship. We can also support each other, right? We can be there for our parents. That's
Yeah.
different than us parenting them. And at different phases in life and in different situations, the lines are different. And so
Yeah.
I don't think it's this like clear line in the sand, but I know for me, it's very much when I feel like I'm being asked to fix something that isn't my responsibility to fix versus if someone's asking me to just hold some space or like give them some support or even just offer a perspective and there's not this pressure around it like I need you to handle this for me.
Hmm.
That's the difference that I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But I think that the line is blurry and a lot of it comes down to like how you feel in it. I
Yeah.
also think the masculine feminine dynamic is super important. And I think that a lot of women, it's easy for them to fall into their masculine, at least like the large population that I work with, because I do work with a lot
Hmm.
of business owners. And so a lot of business owners will get more into their masculine energy. Or if you're a healer, that's a very attractive archetype for so many reasons, but also when you are trying to heal or fix or coach your partner, you are making them your child.
Yeah.
And you completely lose the polarity. And so one of the things that I have to really learn and be conscious of, and my partners have helped me with this before. I think I'm pretty good about it now, but it was certainly learning. And like there's certainly little times where my partner, I will tell him, you just need to set a boundary with me but I don't do it really as much anymore. But it's a big reason why previous relationships of mine didn't work out because they were my client basically. Like I was coaching them.
Yeah.
They were struggling, and so I would treat it the same way I would treat a client. And then we lost the polarity because I wasn't seeing them as my partner, as my king anymore. I was seeing them as
Yeah.
client.
Yeah.
And then I was feeling drained all the time. So the thing is with that masculine and feminine energy, like the masculine needs to solve their own problems. And so what I've learned is when my boyfriend is, when he's venting, when he's sharing, when he's frustrated, I just listen. I listen to him and I affirm him. I praise him. I remind him that I know that he's going to figure this out.
Yeah.
Remind him of how amazing he is and that I'm confident in him and that even if he's, struggling or frustrated right now, like I'm with him. I support him in whatever he decides. That's the most important thing. Like, I support you in whatever you decide instead of me like jumping into trying to fix it because
Yeah.
I have confidence he can handle it and that keeps him in the masculine, right? And eventually, like if he wants my perspective, he will ask me. And I'll
Exactly.
also, if I'm
Yeah.
ever confused, I'll say, hey, like I'm here to support you. Like if you want my perspective, happy to give it. Like if you can ask that, but I
Hmm.
trust you to figure this out. So I will ask him, how can I best support you? And he always knows, right? Like sometimes he will say, well, I want to know what you think. And so then I will offer what I think.
Hmm.
But a lot of times he's like, I just needed to vent. Like I just needed to vent. And I'm like, I'm totally here for you with that,
Yeah.
and I think that's the difference is there's no problem with asking people how they want to be supported. I mean, I do that with obviously my romantic partner, but I do that with my friends. I do that with everybody I
Yeah.
know. Unless they're paying me, then I'm pretty confident how I know how they want me to support them.
Yeah.
But I will ask because I don't want to interject my opinion unless that's what they're looking for. And a lot of times people just want to feel seen and heard and they just want some space held for them. And so
Hmm.
I'm happy to do that. But I like to give people the space to just to share and they can decide if they want my opinion or not.
Yeah. And I think that's respectful too. And it's like such an empowering way. And especially like going back to like the masculine part, like that's what a lot of men want.
Hmm.
When we're offering our opinion and it's not invited, like that really does take them out of their masculine, and whether they
Yeah.
know that consciously or subconsciously, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And so, and I think too, like when there is like that divine masculine and feminine balance and they're like aligned in like that healthiness, that you feed off of that. Like you guys like can grow together in like this really beautiful conscious relationship, right? But I think like a lot of people need to learn how to communicate in that way like that you just described,
Yeah.
because people are just like projecting their shit onto other people based on their experiences too. Like I've even found that like in the coaching industry, and I know like we can all like I'm guilty of this in the past too. I'm more conscious of it now, but like we just need to be so mindful of like how we're receiving people when they're coming to us and telling us about what's happening for them, because like just because there was a similar situation that you've gone through, it doesn't mean that it's going to have the same outcome or that it's even like the same energetics around it as well either too. Like that's their story, that's their journey. It could be completely different and we don't know,
Hmm.
or maybe we do know because we're intuitive, but that's for them to figure out too, right? Like I think a lot
Yeah.
of times too, like even if I know you've mentioned this before too, of like even like sometimes people will like come to you and like want your opinion, but then when you tell them like what it is too, they're just like, nope, that's not it. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like
I'm like, I
right?
don't care. I don't care, you know.
Yeah.
I think yeah, there's definitely a lot of projection going on. I think I'm pretty conscious of it because it's kind of my
Yeah.
job. So there's lots of advice I give that like certainly would never work for me. Or I'm like, yeah, like that, So I think there's an art, but when it comes to, how we reply to people when they're sharing maybe a struggle they're having,
Yeah.
a lot of that comes back to our deeper intention. And I think that's something really helpful to look at because I find that a lot of people who love to give unsolicited advice or they jump into trying to heal or fix, it's coming from a wound and or it's coming from a feeling they have about the person in front of them, right? Like when I'm looking at, like, I am fully confident in my boyfriend's ability to solve his problems. He's very smart. He's very capable. I'm very confident in his ability to lead. And
Yeah.
because of that, I don't feel like I need to figure it out for him. But there have been people I dated in the past where I would jump in and share my opinion. And the truth of the matter is, like, I did that unconsciously because I didn't trust him because I didn't think he was capable. I didn't think he was capable. And I
Yeah.
needed to realize that within myself, right? But the one of the other big things I see, um, and I with whether it's friends or clients, when people are jumping with their unsolicited advice, is often coming from a place of just trying to prove themselves.
Yeah.
right? They're trying to prove their abilities, they're trying to prove how smart they are, they're trying to prove their intuitive gifts.
Hmm.
And this need to be validated overrides the consciousness of how can I just genuinely support this person. And so
Hmm.
when we're not trying to get validation or praise or get something about us in relation to it, it's very easy and natural when someone's asking for help for us to go into, well, how can I support you?
Yeah.
Because your only intention at that point is, I just want to support them.
Yeah.
Versus if our intention is, well, I want to prove myself and I'm making it about me, then you're
Hmm.
going to jump in and try and fix everybody else's problems, you know? And
Yeah.
a lot of this, again, it's context. It's very different if someone's like, hey, I'm going through this and I wanted to ask you your opinion. Like clearly they wanted to ask you your opinion, but
Yeah.
I'm talking more about the unsolicited advice.
Yeah. And it's like horrible being on the end of that, like receiving
Mhm.
that unsolicited advice because it really, like, I mean, I've been on the other end of that where I'm just like,
Mhm.
fuck, like, do I like not trust myself? Does this person know better than me? And it's like, no,
Mhm.
like we want to leave people feeling empowered and knowing that like they can trust themselves to like get through it if that's unless they're asking for, your opinion, like what you said, right? So
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
yeah, and I will echo that. I do not like being on the other end of unsolicited advice. It
Hmm.
makes me feel I don't like to be on the receiving end of somebody else's need to validate themselves. Like, don't
Hmm.
use me as your weapon for that,
Yeah.
essentially. It doesn't feel good. It also, on the receiving ends can make you feel, and I've said this to people before where because I'll be really clear. I'm like, hey, I'm just sharing this. Like, I don't need any perspective, and they'll still give it to me.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
like, I'm like, and I'll say, it makes me feel like you are not hearing me and not seeing me because you're not listening to
Yeah.
what I'm saying. You are just listening to one piece and then trying to find a way to validate yourself in what I said. Like
Hmm.
you're not listening to me at all,
Yeah.
right? And I think that's a really important thing for me about feeling heard. And I mean, I've with my partner, we've had these conversations early on because he wants to help. And so a lot of times
Hmm.
helping is like fixing. And I've said, I'm a woman, like I just want to vent about things, and typically that's all I need to move on. Like it doesn't really need to be solved, and I just need you to kind of hold space. And I told him, like, what I'm saying, I just want to vent about it, and I'm talking, and then I'm saying, maybe how I felt, and then this is what I'm gonna do. I've decided what I'm gonna do, and then you jump in with your opinion. It makes me feel like you're not listening to what I'm saying because
Yeah.
I didn't ask for what you think I should do. I was sharing how I was feeling, and then I decided what my solution was going to be,
Yeah.
and I know that really impacted him and helped him. And he's like, yeah, it's a big thing I've had to learn that like sometimes people just need to be heard. They don't always need somebody to fix things.
Hmm.
Um, so I think it's a growth opportunity for healthier communication, like all around, and that translates into every part of your life.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're like in such a responsive culture too, right? Like this day and
Mhm.
age where it's like people just want to respond again, like because, and it's like fine to like be anchored into your core beliefs, but especially if like you do the work that we do, you have to be able to like read the person and like again, like be able to communicate and understand like what they want to and be able to hold that space for them in the way that they need, right? And so,
Mhm.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think people are really fast to say things and not understand the implications. I also think
Hmm.
it's hard in a day where it's a lot of bite-sized information or moments. And then on the opposite side of things, people are very upset that people can't get into every nuance in like a 10-second clip, And I see kind of both sides, but I mean, it's interesting. I honestly, like right before this, I was kind of in a conversation with someone about this exact same thing because it was a friend of mine who had posted something to social media, and I replied to her and I said, look, I understand your intention of saying this, but I don't think you're really understanding the repercussions of what you're saying because it's making this whole other group of people feel a little gaslit. And like you can make your point about this part being true without needing to invalidate this other whole part of the
Yeah.
population having a different experience. Like,
Yeah.
and I think that's a problem with a lot of this kind of clickbaity type of conversation where people aren't open to the nuance or being clear about the nuance, and then it can create even more confusion and guilt. And I think, I have a different perspective because when you're somebody that's like sharing advice essentially, there's a different level of responsibility. It's like a different piece, right? I'm aware of things that I say, and I try to be as nuanced as I can in whatever format I'm in. There's only so
Mm-hmm.
much I can nuance within like 30 seconds. But I think that there are ways, like in short, one of the things she had posted was she said, "This is made up." And it was something about energetics. And I said, "This isn't made up." Like
Yeah.
it might, and I said, "It might not be the only thing that's going to get someone to where they want to go."
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that was a point she was making.
Yeah.
Like that there's other things basically that you can't she was trying to make the point that you can't meditate your way to everything you want, which I totally agree with. I
Mm-hmm.
totally agree with. I said of course you can't,
Yeah.
right? And I said but that can be very true that you can't meditate uh, the way to what you want
Yeah.
all the way, but that doesn't mean that people talking about the energetics of things that's made up. It's not.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was kind of the conversation I had with her, and I said I think I said I know your point, but you have to understand on the receiving side for somebody who's like watching your stories, there's a large group of people that now are going to feel like they're not doing enough. They're just not doing enough in the physical.
Mm-hmm.
And what about the people that are overdoing everything in the physical and maybe they need some meditation or they need some energy work
Yeah.
to balance it out? I was like, it goes both directions.
Yeah.
So I think that and she was like it's just interesting because we have the same beliefs about this stuff, but the
Mm-hmm.
way it was expressed, I was like, just so you know, this is the way it seems.
Yeah.
And I think that when you're a practitioner, you have a responsibility to be a little more nuanced as much as you can,
Yeah.
instead of just being clickbaity. So there's that other side of the conversation as well when you're like sharing public information.
Mm-hmm. No, and I totally agree with that because, like, I mean, it really is nuanced, right? And it's so situational based. It really is. And like you said, like you actually said this in the membership one time. It's like we also like I know we have that responsibility of like consumerism, like when we're online, but like as leaders in these communities, like we do have a responsibility to carry that out as like as nuanced as we can, you know?
Hmm.
And I think like a lot of people are just trying to post like whatever is like the next like controversial thing to, you know, have a stand, you know, but I
Hmm.
feel like you can have a stand while also being nuanced at the same time,
Yeah.
you know? Because
Yeah.
like you're a great example of that, right? Like, I mean, because I've listened to your podcast and I've like dove into a lot of your work, like I feel like I know you. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I know you and I know what you
Mhm.
stand for and your beliefs, but also again, like you said, like you understand the world in such a different way because of, you know, how tapped in you are and these gifts that you have and because you're able to see the world in this different perspective, right? And
Mhm.
yeah, you carry that out really beautifully in all of your content. So
Thank you. I
yeah.
appreciate that. Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
like it goes both ways, right? It's kind of being aware of that responsibility. It's also the responsibility of the consumer, right?
Yeah.
Because not every post is going to be for every person, and
No,
that's
no.
that's okay. But I think if I know anything, like if I know anything, it's really just that life is not this black and white thing. Like
Yeah.
it's not. There's so much nuance. There's so many different experiences. Bioindividuality is the realest thing of all time, And I think that's what, what I was saying to this person. I was like, you and I both know, like I've worked with thousands of people, like intimately. And what I know to be true is that the same thing does not work for everybody. No,
Yeah.
the same diet doesn't work for everybody. The same movement doesn't work for everybody. The same lifestyle practices, the same scheduling. Like some of us are more creative, some of us are more left brains. Like
Hmm.
everyone is so different. And so if I can count on anything, it's variability.
Yeah.
And I think we need to honor that. And it's like, that doesn't mean, we can't share specific things, but I think it's not saying it as like, this is final. And if this doesn't work for you, like, you're a piece of shit. Like, I
Yeah,
think that's the
exactly.
problem. It's just like, hey, like, this is what I'm teaching about and advocating for. That doesn't mean these other things need to be dismissed or they're wrong. This is just
Yeah,
my area. This is what I'm talking about. And there's a
exactly.
difference there in energy.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, like I completely agree with that. This has come up for me around like, well, like I work with people with like who are in like monogamous relationships and
Hmm.
I haven't like posted content about this yet, but I was like, you know, like I really deeply believe in monogamy, but
Hmm.
and like the reason I believe in that is like honestly like from an energetic perspective of like obviously like letting so many people like into your energy field,
Hmm.
especially like into your heart too. Like for me, like that's just like overwhelming. It's overwhelming enough with like one person,
Hmm.
right? But you know, like I see a lot like in the spiritual community that there's like polyamorous relationships happening for me, like that just does not resonate with me. And it feels wrong for me, but that's just for me
Hmm.
personally, right? So I'm wondering like if you feel comfortable talking about it, like what's your perspective on that? If you're
Yeah. And this is it's the tough part, right? I can totally
yeah,
resonate with what you're saying because for me, I'm very aware of the different layers to my perspective. Like
yeah,
if I'm just doing a straight energy read on something, taking all of Christina out of it, that's going to be different than when like Christina will have her own opinion, right? But my opinion about it, if I think something's helpful or not, can be very different than just the energy I'm reading.
yeah,
And sometimes they overlap, right? And I think that's where especially with spiritual things and like channeled messages, people want to know what's right and what's wrong. But the point of this is not to tell you what is right or what's wrong. It's
yeah,
just to kind of tell you the energetic impacts, and then you make a choice for yourself about what's right or
yeah,
wrong. Like for me, whenever I'm saying something's better than or worse than, that's very much a Christina interpretation.
yeah,
But if you're asking, like if it's just a straight channeling, like or like a spiritual insight, like the divine is not going to say this is better, this is worse. Like
yeah,
that's just not how they, it's different.
yeah,
And then I'm going to make an assumption, you know? So when it comes to monogamy, um, personally, I am I think it's the way to go as a human being, you know? So I mean, that's just the truth of it. And
yeah, yeah,
I know people in who are not in monogamous relationships, and I'm not sure I've ever seen it work. Like
yeah, yeah,
I
me
actually
neither.
I have never seen it work. And I also, you know, there are lots of spiritual teachers who really know their shit who were polyamorous for a long time, and like pretty much every single person has said they went back to monogamy, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, I realized XYZ. I think there's a reason for that. You know, I think the one person who has done it well is Paul Check, and he will say that he doesn't recommend anyone else ever does it because it's so hard, you
Yeah.
know? But I think spiritually, like in terms of how we're supposed to integrate things here on the planet, I'm definitely pro monogamy.
Yeah.
But that doesn't like I mean I have close friends that are in polyamorous relationships and I don't judge that at all. Like in full support if you're happy and it's working for you.
Yeah.
Like and I think that's the thing is I'm for me to do what I do. I'm like so neutral as a person. Like
Yeah.
people will say this, like there's nothing that's really gonna trigger me or upset me or like you shouldn't be doing that. Like I don't really give a shit. You know, it's not my
Yeah.
deal. But to give clear psychic reads, you have to as a person just be so neutral. Like because there's no anyone who comes into my to see me, like I can't. There's no judgment there. Like I'm just seeing them as a soul,
Yeah.
right? And so I think a great example of this honestly is something with career and the monogamy polyamory thing is a great example too, but I have a lot of clients who do things with their careers that like me as Christina, like I'm like I would never do that, you know, or I would not ever participate in that or support
Yeah.
that, but like in that room I have no judgment over that, you know,
Yeah.
like and sometimes they're super out of alignment and sometimes they're right on alignment, you
Yeah.
know? Sometimes like what they're doing, I'm like, I do not like that, but that's it's your sole purpose. I mean, your spirit guides are saying it. So who am I don't give a shit, you know? So
Yeah.
like I'm gonna support people whenever it makes them happy, but I'm also gonna
Yeah.
call you out if you're telling me that this is working for you when it's clearly not, you know?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times with the outside of the monogamy space, people use it as a way to hide things and people use it as a way to like they just don't want to be in the relationship but they're too afraid to leave it, you
Yeah.
know? And it's actually scarcity energy is what it typically is,
Yeah.
or it's a way of um I would say just feeding their ego. It's a way of avoiding the hard spiritual work,
Yeah.
I think.
Agree.
But
Yeah.
they pretend that it's a way to go deeper into the spiritual work.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and so, you know, I think that's the thing. People ask my opinion on stuff like this, and I'm happy to give it. I'm not saying what I think is the end all be all, but I'm pretty clear on it, you know. And
Yeah.
I've with that, if you want my personal spiritual perspective, I mean, I think. monogamy all the way. I've never seen polyamory work from a divine perspective. It's also very much the same thing. I mean, I've asked every ascended master I can. I've asked every, I mean, and it's pretty, it's, they don't say that. They're not like, yeah, this is the way to go, but they say like, they're essentially like, this is what this does to your energy body and your consciousness and your ability to
Yeah.
deepen within yourself and to expand as a soul. And
Hmm.
one is helping you expand as a soul, and the other is avoiding the soul work,
Yeah.
is like basically how they say, but they're not saying you should or shouldn't do it. They're just saying this is what happened. So you pick your adventure.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm very much a believer in monogamy. I believe that's the fastest path to spiritual ascension and spiritual growth
Hmm.
and personal growth. It allows you to have a really clear mirror. And when you have one person that's a really clear mirror, you go deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's what
Yeah.
brings you back to source more and more clearly. Um, every time. And so I think it's built in. I can't run away. I can't avoid. I've got to face my
Mhm.
stuff. And that is how we evolve as souls. And that's a big reason we're in relationship, amongst other things, you
Yeah,
know?
100%. Yeah. Um, I know we're at time, so we'll just like wrap it up here. Thank you so much. Like, I love your perspective and everything that you said. It like deeply resonates with me. And yeah, do you have any like last like little golden nuggets for anybody?
About anything in particular?
No, just like whatever's coming through for you. You can get creative with it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I appreciate you having me on. I always love doing this. And I think that I guess just the energy I feel like with your community and your audience, I would say a lot of times the things that we're afraid of the most are the things that are going to get us everything that we want.
Hmm.
And so when we have fears around speaking our truth, fears around being direct, showing who we really are, fears around
Yeah.
doing things a little bit differently, fears around clarity, because I think, the theme through everything we talked about was one energy of it is this is who I am and I'm going to stand still and let you see me. The other energy is I'm going to avoid, I'm going to hide, I'm going to hold back, right? Whether we're
Yeah.
talking about monogamy or we're talking about direct communication, we're talking about business building. Those are kind of that's the two energies that have been throughout this whole conversation. And so I would just say, whenever we're in a certain habit, that's always going to feel more comfortable. But alignment isn't comfort. They're not the same thing.
Yeah.
And often to live in our highest alignment and to live our purpose, we're going to be in a lot of discomfort. I certainly know I am. I am uncomfortable
Yeah.
all the time, but me moving through that discomfort and moving forward anyway gives me this deep satisfaction and fulfillment and continuous growth. And that's what I've been looking for all along. So you're
Hmm.
not going to get that deep satisfaction from staying comfortable all the time.
Yeah.
And when you get uncomfortable in ways that are in alignment for you, it's what really opens up that feeling of freedom in your life and for you to feel fully empowered in who you are. And so I think at the end of the day, that's what people are looking for. And
Yeah.
so I would say typically when we're feeling like we're not in balance or we're feeling stuck, we need to look in the direction that we're avoiding or do the thing that we're avoiding. It's pretty much always that. And so
Yeah.
I would just leave people with that of maybe look at that thing that you have the most fear around or you're trying to avoid the most. And that's probably the direction to kind of massage out and step
Mhm.
into.
I love that. I love that. Oh my gosh, Christina, this is such a good conversation. Thank you so much for coming on, for sharing your wisdom with us. Where can people find you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah, I'm everywhere at Christina the Channel. I'm pretty easy to find. So Instagram, TikTok, Christina the Channel, YouTube.com/Christina the Channel. My website is ChristinaTheChannel.com. My podcast is Multidimensional with Christina the Channel. It's on all podcast platforms. So pretty easy to find. And thank you again for having me on. This is so fun.
Oh, of
And I'm so
course.
grateful to have you in our community and
Oh, thank
to be able
you.
to support you as well. So yeah, I'm just
Yes.
excited and grateful for this. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. The feeling's so mutual. Yeah. Guys, go listen to her podcast. It's like life changing, and all of her courses are amazing. I've literally taken pretty much all of them. So,
I love it.
yeah. All right. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you later.